Something that might be feeling a little bit awkward if you're new to piano is just playing a basic chord without catching other notes you don't want, without it feeling tense, and this takes a little bit of getting used to get your fingers under control. I want to give you some simple but important tips to cover the basics and help you practice, correct where you may be going wrong, and help make this feel easier. And just to let you know, there will be a part 2 coming soon, going over changing chords and how to flow from one to the next smoothly. First off, this is the general position you want to start in here. Notice how my elbow and forearm are just above the keys. This is kind of flat. And my hand and fingers gently curve down onto the keys. So my fingertips are just touching them like this. This is going to help you come down onto the keys. And this arch shape in your hand, kind of stabilized by your knuckles, is going to help support your fingers and use them more easily. Now, to help you get into a position like this, just make sure that your stool isn't too high or too low and that you're not sitting too far or too close to the piano. Now, once you're in position, the main concept to think about is that we want to bring down the notes, and this is the key, with the help of our arm and our hand together. So we do not want a static hand and fingers jabbing or poking out like this. We want more of a motion like this with the fingers and hands working together. But let's get you to see what that feels like for yourself. So place your fingers back on the piano and get used to what that part of this feels like by bringing all your fingers down together. We can worry about targeting specific notes in a minute. Now the trick is that as you come down, don't over tense your hand. Don't grip like this. You don't want anything to feel tense or rigid. You just want to engage your fingers a little bit, just enough to control things. Enough to stop your hand collapsing like that, but not too much that it feels tense. You don't want to be bending your wrist under the keyboard like that. You don't want to be angled down from above too much. And you don't want to over curl your fingers. And you definitely don't want to be flattening your fingers. All of those things are going to make it more difficult to play. Okay, now to actually play a chord then. This may take a little bit more practice, and if it's still too tricky, then you can build up to it by trying each finger on its own and then sets of 2 fingers, and I'll give you some quick tips for that after. We're going to use a basic F major chord in root position as an example. That is the notes F, A, and C. Now, there are various combinations of fingers we can use to play chords like this. We need different fingers for different situations depending on what else is happening. So it's important really to practice different things so you can be versatile. I'm going to do this example with fingers 1, 3, and 5. But you can apply everything here to other finger combos and the left hand too, and I'll show you some other fingers to try at the end. You need to make sure that your hand is forward enough this way to bring your thumb to the keys, a white key in this case. Otherwise, what you end up doing is twisting round like that. And you don't want to do that. It makes things feel tense and awkward. It's more difficult. And of course, remember to check you're in the position we talked about earlier. Now, the trick really is to remember, don't try and poke those fingers out. Don't try and force the other fingers up. But we just need that little bit of engagement targeted at the fingers that you want to use. Just a tiny bit, and then use your arm and hand to help them come down. So give that a go. It may take a few tries. Try it again, lift up. When you change chord, remember to lift up and then to come back down again. Lift up to release the keys and come back down again. Listen out for a clean, even sound. So not like this. Using your arm to bring down the notes is going to help you get that clean sound and bring all the notes down evenly together, but it's also what's going to help you control the dynamics. Play softer and play louder. If you remember one thing, I would say don't force it, and that's where mistakes can happen. But make sure your hand shape doesn't collapse like this. If you maintain that hand shape to keep everything strong, you're just trying to get used to that little amount of engagement in your fingers just to control the landing. You want to feel like your fingers are just kind of supporting or balancing your hand on the keys. You want to still feel like your arm's kind of holding the weight up mostly. You don't want to let your weight drop so your arm sinks down like here. And you really don't, this is where a lot of people go wrong, you really don't want to lean any weight into the keyboard. You don't want to dig in, and you definitely don't want to keep pushing at all with your fingers.
Don't push it.
So we need to be able to release that so we can lift up and play the chord again or play another chord. Like I say, people often get this wrong, and it feels like you're getting stuck when you're playing, and that's when your hand feels stiff. Doing that's kind of like trying to lift something up at the same time that you're also leaning weight on it. And another important thing, notice how there's a bit of flex in my wrist, so your wrist joint wants to feel nice and relaxed. So just play some notes down again, and you should be able to do this with your wrist like that. So when we're playing, like I said, it shouldn't look like jabbing fingers out like that, nor should it look like moving your arm stiff like that. It's kind of a motion like this with a little bit of give in your wrist. Imagine you're clapping, you wouldn't clap like that, you'd clap like that. So that's the feeling you want to capture when you're playing. It's just that your hand's going to be like this, so your fingers are directed to the keys at the same time. Now remember, if that is too difficult, what's worth practicing is individual fingers, starting with your thumb. Just go slowly, just leave a gap between them, and you're trying to target each individual finger. Now for this, you also kind of want to get your weight over the top of the finger that you're using. That's really helpful. And then let's say you're trying to practice fingers 1, 3 and 5. Well, now you can practice 2 at a time to build up. So that would be maybe the outside 2 to start with, and then the bottom 2, and then the top 2. Some other finger combos you should practice too, because you're going to need them as well, is fingers 1, 2 and 4, as well as 1, 2 and 3, which you'll use sometimes. That one's probably a little bit easier. And I would just focus on them to start with, but in the future you may also need 2, 3 and 5, and I'd only really use that one if I needed my thumb free for something like that. Now all of those fingers are going to be the same for your left hand as well. They'll just be back to front. A couple of finger positions to avoid, and I see people making mistakes here. One would be finger 1, 2 and 5. You've got these 2 fingers kind of squished up like that in 2 smaller space. You would use that for inversions shapes when that finger is spread higher. That's okay, but not like this. And something else would be having fingers 4 and 5 spread out like that. So something like 2, 4 and 5. That's awkward, don't do that either. If any of these basic root position chords have black keys in, essentially we need to bring our hand more forward to reach them and play them comfortably. I have a whole video going really in depth into hand positioning for lots of situations you can check out as well after. So if I was to play an E chord, I can come forward a little bit more because there's a black note in the middle. But if my thumb needs to be on a black key, I need to go even more forward, so I can avoid doing that to get there. That makes it far more difficult to implement the good technique that we've been talking about throughout the video. I hope that was helpful. Next, you can watch this video to learn about chord inversions. That's how we can play chords in different ways. That's really important to learn. And there's some other helpful videos listed in the description too. Thanks for watching.